Good afternoon, dear students. I'm Danyanyikwa Amolungu, your tutor for English 1 for the course BESP. My contact number is displayed there is 08134142555. I would like to welcome you to this presentation, and I wish you all to be hardworking, dedicated, and self-driven students in this course. This presentation will only cover content based on the 2018 assignment. I'll discuss only some of the content of the module due to time, and you should know that the information that we are going to cover here is very important for the assignment. In this presentation, we will only highlight some of the important aspects and units of this module that are crucial to the assignment. This presentation will be as follows. We'll start off with important notes, and then the assignment-based content, as well as the conclusion after everything is done. The important notes that you need to consider are: the 2018 assignment will be structured as follows. There will be some short questions as well as some long questions. The short ones include questions with verbs such as mention, define, list, name, describe, match, compare, etc. And the long questions include explain, discuss, plan, as well as critically discuss. You need to pay attention to the exit learning outcomes in the index of the study guide. The total number of marks for the whole assignment is 130 marks. Let's start off with the first part of the assignment, which is the language development approaches, starting off with the constructivist approach. The first thing that you need to take note of here is perhaps that this approach is learner-centered. Learners in this approach are more actively involved, comparing to an approach which is teacher-centered, where the teacher does most of the talking. This approach allows a student to experience an environment firsthand. That means they will be you place them in an environment which they experience as if it's a real-life environment. The student is required to act upon the environment to both acquire and test new knowledge. This, in the long run, triggers curiosity. The type of learner in this approach is self-directed, creative, and innovative. They actually take control of their own learning. For as long as a suitable environment is provided, they can learn on their own. And the teacher here can just act as a mentor or an advisor to mentor the learner through problem solving. The learning goal here is the highest order of learning. Problem solving, you can give them a situation in which there is a problem and then they can try to solve the problem. We can bring in something like telephone conversations and job interviews or something like that. When they practice, they get more language skills which can help them to develop their own language. Let's move on to the next slide. The next slide is on stages of language development. We'll start off with the early one-word stage, which is about 12 to 19 months. And children at this age normally use sound combinations, which may not make a lot of sense, but they normally associate words in this stage with objects. For example, if a baby says the word moo, when you give a bottle of milk, the next time a child says a word like that, you already know as an adult what the child wants or requires. Similarly, if the child says baby every time you give a biscuit, even if the sound combination doesn't sound like an adult word, you will really know that the baby means they want a biscuit. Let's move on to the next stage, which is the later one-word stage, which is a stage between 14 and 24 months. Here, the words that a child uses are more identifiable as adult words. The baby can say words like mommy, daddy, bye, sit, or something like that. And to make it easier for an adult, the child normally uses expressions when they are saying these words. Let's move on to the next stage, which is the two-word stage. This is a stage between 20 and 30 months. As the word implies, two-word, the child here starts using two-word combinations, such as daddy car to mean there is daddy car, or that is daddy's car, or daddy's car is here. Okay? And most of these words, they are a combination of nouns. The next stage is the three-word stage, which is roughly at 28 to 48 months of age. These children use three-word combinations, and they may bring in prepositions such as in, under, on, although sometimes they may not use them correctly as they haven't mastered their language skills yet. Like a baby may say mommy on bed. Mommy, a noun, on, a preposition, and bed, a noun again. Or a baby can even, or a child can even say mommy in bed, but that doesn't matter, for as long as the child says something that is understandable and it's a three-word, that means they are at this stage of language development. Moving on to the next stage, which is the four-word stage. Here, a child is about 34 to 48 months. A child doesn't only say 4 words, but can say even up to 6 words. For example, daddy playing with little ball. Even if it's not really a complete sentence, an adult will be able to make out the meaning of the whole utterance. And the last stage here is the complex utterances stage, which is from 48 to 60 months. Here, the child uses sentences which are up to, which are more than six words. Here, although the child hasn't developed full vocabulary, we can say they have mastered most of their language skills. At 5 years of age, the child may have developed all the adult linguistic features, although you'll find in some cases where a child may still struggle with proper sentence structures and things like that. Moving on to activities for practicing listening. Some of the activities are answering questions after listening to short oral presentations. This can be used normally like in listening comprehensions, where a teacher may read a text to the learners, give them questions, and then they answer while listening to the teacher. The next one is summarize facts and point of view of newspaper articles. Here you can use a newspaper article, you can cut it out and then make copies, and then you can, since it's a listening activity, you can still read it for them, and then they identify the facts. But before you give them to identify the facts, you should make it clear to them what a fact is. The next activity is summarize the main points after listening to a report. You can make them listen for keywords, for example, because the main points are centered around keywords in a reading text or a listening text. You let the learners listen to a sentence, a paragraph, a passage, and then identify the main points. I think it's very imperative to know that most of the summarizing activities that are given at primary level are in a note form and not in a prose form. The prose form is most common in senior secondary from grade 11 to 12. The next activity is listen to the facts and opinions of a debate or a discussion. You can have learners debate in a class. They listen to one another, and here they can be able to identify facts and opinions as the others are debating. Let's move on to the importance of stories. Why are stories important, you may ask? These stories teach kids or children about the life outside their own little world. When you tell a story to learners, It must be a very creative one and imaginative one. By reading a story to the kids, they will be able to imagine themselves in a different world than the one they are in. The other point is enjoyment. Stories are fun. And you as a teacher, if you tell stories to the kids, you must make it more lively. If the learners are interested in the story and you are saying it in a fun, telling it in a fun way, then the learners will be able to enjoy the story. It's really not a good idea for a teacher to tell a story in a boring way. This will make learners less interested and the story will not be enjoyable in the end. The next importance is the child becomes involved with all the senses. When you tell a story, you must bring in all these feelings. You can use your voice, you can use facial expression, you can use the sense of touch. Let's say you are telling a story that is scary. You can try to maybe just touch a kid and then they will experience that sense. Okay. The next importance is that it's a powerful medium to introduce children to other foreign cultures. If a story is about a certain child who is from a certain culture, the learners will also be able to pick it up that this story is about a person from an American culture, from a Ovahimba culture, or something like that. The last one is giving the opportunity that the child can get to tell his own or her own stories. When you tell stories to children, they will also be motivated to try telling stories on their own. Maybe you can give them a chance also as a speaking activity, so that they learn to tell stories and they become more confident as they happen to do it often and often, learning from you as the teacher. Lesson planning. Lesson planning is very important. When you are going to deliver a lesson to learners, you need to be prepared, because you don't really want to stand there dumbfounded when a child asks you a question, for example, or if they want to comment and then you are really uncertain of what will happen or what the child is really talking about. So when you plan your lesson, you have to take into consideration the lesson objectives and basic competencies. In the assignment, you'll be expected to plan a lesson, and you don't take the lesson objectives and competencies from your head. There's actually a syllabus that is prescribed, and use that one for your lesson planning. There's a term called English across the curriculum in the lesson plan. This means a content that is from all other areas, not only English. For example, you can take content from a natural studies or social studies textbook, and then you integrate it in an English lesson. All the activities that you provide for the learners when you are planning a lesson, they must cover the basic competencies. How else will you know that the learners have mastered the skills if you did not give an appropriate activity? In your lesson planning as well, your introduction should be interesting. When you come to a class, whether the class will be a good one or will have positive results, all depends on how you start it. If you start a lesson in a boring way, then the learners will not be interested. And in the end, the basic competencies will not be covered. And that will make you have to repeat the same content all over again. The last thing that you need to take note of when planning a lesson is that language skills cannot be taught in isolation. Language skills include reading, writing, grammar, as well as speaking. So instead of teaching only reading, you can pair it up with writing, for example. You can give a reading and directed writing passage, they read through it and then answer questions based on that. In conclusion, I would like you to please, when answering the questions in the assignment, I need you to read the instructions carefully. If you fail to follow the instruction, that will mean that your answer will not be appropriate. Your answer must be complete. If you are given, for example, a question that has about 20 marks, you must provide points that are up to 20 in order to get those marks. If you give a short answer, then you have less marks as well. I would urge you to please write as neatly as you can. If you can type the assignment, although it's not compulsory. You can type the assignment so that marking will be easy. And the last thing in the conclusion is that you need to use your own examples to elucidate whatever it is that you are talking about. Don't copy examples from the book, please. Don't copy. Come up with your own examples. We have come to the end of our presentation. I would like to thank you very much for coming.